So we're supposed to wait for the thing, I guess,
Yeah,
on the
wait for it
upper
to
left.
go. There it is.
Oh, wait, we're live. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline Leavitt. I'm the co-founder of A Mighty Blaze. And we have the wonderful Tom Shampoo is doing the technical stuff. And best of all, we have Ann Hood and her husband, Michael Ruhlman. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have them. So I have an introduction first, and then we're going to get them talking and talking about food and stories. Okay, I have 3 Ann Hood stories to tell. But first, I have to give her incredible bio. And if I leave anything out, Ann, you just tell us.
No.
Okay. Ann Hood is the New York Times bestselling author of 14 novels, 4 memoirs, a short story collection, a 10-book series for middle readers, and 1 young adult novel. Her essays and short stories have appeared in many journals, magazines, and anthologies, including Modern Love, The Paris Review, Plowshares, and Tin House. Her most recent work is Kitchen Yarns, which was a People Magazine Book of the Week, a Washington Post top 10 books for December, BBC top 10 books for December too, and an Amazon Best cookbook for December. It's also a New York Times editor's pick. Anne also teaches, and she's the creator of the Newport MFA in Writing, which has an optional semester in Havana, Cuba. And she's also the creator of Gracie Bell Books, an imprint about grief, loss, and recovery, named after her daughter. Anne and I share the same agent, and I'm thrilled to be your friends. So here come the Ann Hood stories. Okay, first story. Okay, I was really no. I was really young and sitting in an airport waiting for a plane to go back to school. And the stewardess walked, and I'm reading, I still remember the book, it was Jill Johnston, some book, and I'm just reading it. Nobody's paying attention to me. All of a sudden, this airline stewardess walks by, and absolutely gorgeous in these gorgeous brown boots. And she looks at me and says, "Oh, what are you reading?" And we had a great conversation. And I remembered that. And I remember when she left, I thought, oh, that woman is so cool. I hope she's the person on my flight. And she wasn't. But I remember when Anne's book came out and I heard that she had been a flight attendant, I thought, I bet that was you. So even if it's not, I'm still going to say it was.
What airport were you in?
It could have been, I bounced around colleges. It could have been in Madison. It could have been in Detroit. Could have been in New York, and it could have been in Boston.
I was in most of those airports. So
yeah.
let's say it was.
Let's say it was. I want to say it was. Okay. Second Ann Hood story. Tucson Book Festival. I came down with the flu while I was there, and I wasn't sure what to do. And all of a sudden, here's this presents. And it's Ann Hood going through her pocketbook, giving me emergency and tissues and everything else I needed, and saved my life. And the last part, which is totally hilarious, you know this story. We were both at the Pulpwood Queens Book Festival, where the authors have to dress up. And this time you had to wear khaki pants, which looks horrific on anybody. No matter what your body type is, khaki pants make you look like a whale.
Yep.
And baseball caps. And we hung out there, and it was so much fun to share those khaki pants with Anne. I was hoping you were going to wear them for today. But
our go-to email thing, like, do we have to wear khaki pants if we do this? Do we have to do this? Do we have to dress like that?
Okay, so now we're turning to her husband. And as soon as I do your introduction, I'm going to ask you about your origin story because it's so enchanting. Michael Ruhlman is a writer, author, chef, and his list of books, I counted 26 of them, reads like a fascinating novel in itself, starting in 1996 with Boys Themselves, going on to The Soul of a Chef, House, a memoir, The Book of Schmaltz, which I, as a nice Jewish girl, love, which is a love story of a forgotten fat. 3 novellas, The Elements of Cooking, Live to Cook, How to Saute, How to Braise, From Scratch. He's also the author of critically acclaimed books, including Grocery, The Soul of a Chef, The Elements of Cooking, Ratio, and Ruhlman's 20. He's collaborated on several best-selling cookbooks, including the French Laundry Cookbook, Bouchon, and Alinea. That's it. So the first question I want to ask, because it's so enchanting, is your origin story, how you met and then went off on different lives and then came back together.
Well, it begins with me because she doesn't remember our first meeting. I was a 25-year-old aspiring novelist, and I had gotten a scholarship to Breadloaf Writers Conference in Vermont. and I was ingratiating myself with as many successful novelists as possible and getting to know them and just meeting them. But there was one that I really wanted to meet, and it was Anne Hood. I don't know why this was so.
Huh.
Well, you were walking. Well, I picture you was walking with other fine novelists, Helen Schulman and Jenny Egan, and for some reason I called out to her. I said, "Ms. Hood," and she turned around, and I said, "I just want to introduce myself. I'm Michael Ruhlman." And she says, "What do you want to do?" And I said, I want to write fiction." And she looked at me and said, "You will." She turned around and walked away, and I didn't see her again for 20 years.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I love that part of the story.
And 20 years later, when he did see me, this is the one I really remember. There was
Okay.
like a weekend writers conference in Cleveland, Ohio, which is where he was living. And I went with my friend Polly, who lived in Cleveland, and was sort of thinking about maybe I want to write. She was kind of at that point in her life with what do I do now? And I was one of the teachers, speakers, whatever, but Michael was the keynote speaker. And so when he walked in, I mean, I had no clue who he was, even though he'd had all these best-selling books and was on TV, but I had not a clue. And he walked in and I said to Polly, "Who's that guy? He's so cute." And Polly looked and said, "Well, I don't know." And then he gets up to the podium and he's the speaker and he says, "Hi, I'm Michael Ruhlman. I just have to say," what did you say? Say it.
I
Say it
said-
better because you said
I said it.
it.
I looked at the audience and I say, "Anne," she's sitting in the fourth row. And I say, "She doesn't know this, but I've been in love with Anne Hood for 20 years."
Oh my God. I love this
Told the-
part of the story.
I told the story about how we met.
And then Polly, my friend, looks at me and goes, "The cute guy's in love with you."
Oh my God.
But we were both married at the time. So it took many years before those marriages fell apart and we re-met, thanks to the wonderful publicist at, not exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks to Aaron Lovett at Norton. But we kept bumping into each other. So
And it turned out we had apartments in New York City, one block.
That's
literally on the next block.
incredible. That's
In the West
incredible.
Village.
unbelievable.
That's New
that-
York. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really unbelievable. That's
Around the
incredible.
corner, literally. He was on West 12th and I was on Bethune and we shared the same D'Agostino's right there.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's like the best story ever. Okay, so I want to know, like, you both love food. I know, and you come from an Italian family, and there's a lot of food in your books, like kitchen stories, all that stuff. And Michael, obviously, you love food. So I wanted to ask, like, Anne, did you learn anything? What did you learn about food from Michael? And Michael, what did you learn about writing?
He's
from
learned
Anne?
exactly nothing from me.
Nothing.
He follows no advice whatsoever.
Do you give her advice? Do you give her advice on cooking?
I've stopped. I long ago
I
stopped.
think it's this John Sebastian story.
That's really
Yeah,
funny.
We
So
we are friends. We have friends in Woodstock, New York. Catherine and John Sebastian. He was one of the Love and Spoonful, like my,
that John Sebastian, I heard that name and I perked up. That's
John
great.
Sebastian. And they're dear friends of mine who are now Michael's friends too. And John is a great cook. He lived in Italy as a younger guy, and he makes amazing Italian food. So we were going to stay there, and usually he makes quite a feast, and we, I chip in a little or whatever. But Michael was working on his book from scratch, his new book, and he wanted to make a Rhode Island specialty called stuffies, which are stuffed quahogs, which are super big clams. And so I asked Catherine, or he asked Catherine, John's wife, is it okay if Michael makes these? She goes, "Yeah, I think it's okay if Michael Ruhlman cooks. I think that's fine. We can do that." And so somehow from that evolved, everybody was going to make a dish. And so I decided I was going to make pasta with sausage and broccoli rabe, which is one of my favorite things. Must have been like autumn because that's when I usually make those, but I don't know. So Michael's doing his stuffies and John is doing his thing and I'm doing my thing. And Michael comes over with like a chef's knife with chopped onions like on the blade. And he's like, "I don't need these, so I'll put them in here in my dish."
In the sausage.
Right. Oh, you
The
must have
sausage
gotten
rub.
crazy, I bet, right?
And I said, "No, that doesn't go in this." And he said, "Why not? Who says?" And I said, "Italy. Do not put onions in this dish." The line was drawn.
It would have been better, but I yes, it would have.
That is so funny. That is so funny. So,
Yeah.
what's the worst writing and cooking advice you've both gotten? Not necessarily from each other, but
No.
in your growth
Writing and
as
cooking
writers.
advice.
Well, my worst writing advice was to write every day when you wake up.
Oh, no, 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 you can't do that.
No. And I don't write that way. And but I tried it and I felt like I wasn't a writer because I couldn't do it.
But some
How do
people
you
do
write?
that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Some
that's
people
like-
do
Some
that.
people do that. That's fine. But to say,
To be that prescriptive.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right. Well, how do you write?
We actually have kind of similar, but then they digress. Slow waker uppers,
Right.
coffee, newspaper.
Right.
Then we have to do the New York Times spelling bee. Do you do that, Caroline?
No, you do the spelling bee? That's so
I
great.
love it.
I'm a terrible speller.
Okay, well, we spend too much time on this in the morning. We do that. And then Michael goes right to work after the spelling bee. I still dilly-dally a little, and I usually work from about 11 to 1 or 2.
In bed, flat on her back, with
Wow.
computer on her,
Yeah.
on a pillow.
Yeah.
on
And
a
you
ch-
can write like that?
She goes like this. Oh, but it's checking.
Yeah, I never learned how to type. So
You've
I'm
never learned how to type.
no.
Well, it seems to be working for you. You don't write like that though, do you, Michael?
No, I sit at a desk.
You
to write.
sit at a desk and so when you're writing a cookbook, do you have all the recipes you know? Have you tried out all the stuff you're cooking first and then you sit down and you write about it and you write the recipe, or does it come at the same time?
That's a good question.
It is a good
I'm
question.
totally curious about how that's done.
Well, there's a mix of both. There's certain things I know I want to write about, like from scratch, I wanted to write about a roast chicken, but I thought, what about all the other things you can do with the roast chicken, which required me to invent some recipes that you could either use leftover roast chicken with, or like the chicken pot pie, and start working on chicken pot pies.
Or stock.
Stock, or making stock. And like the stuffies, I made up the stuffy. I just said I need to make stuffies. I study various recipes. I know what I like and how I like to eat and what I think is best, and I make that. And they put onions in those goddamn stuffies, and they're better
Yes.
for it. That's why
Yes,
I
the
had
onions
extra,
go in the stuffy.
but only so much. But that was a completely made up recipe.
Wow.
It's always based on what's come before you. All of cooking and cooking knowledge comes from the people who preceded you.
It's great eating with him because he tries to figure out what the tastes are.
That was my next question, which is, I know that with people, and you probably do this too, writing fiction, Michael, but for fiction writers, we're always eavesdropping and looking at people
Absolutely.
and imagining their lives. Do you do that with food dishes?
Oh, that's interesting. I
love
certainly do
thinking
it
of that
with
way.
people. I mean, when Ann and I waited at Amtrak station or Penn Station, we make up stories about people and
Oh yeah, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
listen in on when we're eating at a restaurant, listen in and try to figure out, now, what is their relationship?
Yeah.
That older man and that younger woman,
Right,
she's too old
right,
to be
or
his
right.
daughter, but she's too young to be his.
Yeah.
Right, or that guy is wearing orange plaid because he's sure that tonight is going to be the night he'll pick somebody up with that outfit.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's hard to do that with food. I don't make up stories about the food, but I do, you're always thinking about new ideas or new combinations, or I never thought to do that, or how interesting. And you just told me about a new stew that you came up with in Spelling Bee, a Jamaican stew that I'd never heard of.
What stew is that?
Callaloo.
Callaloo. You have to do the
Wow.
spelling. I know you say you're not a good speller, but it's
Oh, I can't.
It's not a
I'm the
matter
one who
of
gets
spelling.
there and there mixed up.
everybody
I do
listening on
too, I do
Facebook
too.
Live. You have to do this.
Okay, I will. So I wanted, as I pass on that,
Yeah,
Um,
just convincingly.
what's it like at home? I mean, like during the pandemic, are you both cooking at the same time? It sounds like you're writing at the same time, or do you switch off? And how is it different than before the pandemic? And is your thought process differently because of the pandemic?
I was really interested in these questions when the pandemic first started. How has
Yeah.
it changed your writing life? Everyone, I was asking all my writer friends.
Yeah.
Of course it has. And as far as cooking goes, we cook a lot more. We used to go out to restaurants
Right.
all the time, and we don't do that anymore. And when we have, it's usually one person does dinner and the other person does it. We don't cook together in the kitchen. Well,
Okay.
After the onion
After the
fiasco of Woodstock, as it's called.
right.
Woodstock.
I love that. Are you doing more comfort foods? Do you feel more like that's
We always do comfort foods. Why
That's
would you
how we
not, why would
eat.
you ever not do comfort foods?
Yeah, you know what? That's what I really like about your philosophy, where I think it was in your latest book, you said something about you shouldn't be thinking about your food as healthy. You should be thinking about it as nutritious. And when I look at your meals, one of the things I love is that I don't think either of you are the kind of person would say, I'm not going to have all this high cholesterol cheese on this,
Nope.
because cheese is delicious.
Yeah, we don't go
Right.
that
And you want
way.
to, okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
But we do sit down either at the beginning of the week or midweek or something and say, okay, what does it look like? Who's going to do what? And sometimes we break up the components, like,
Sure. I'll
Yeah.
do the pasta, or I'll do the vegetables.
yeah, or
Okay.
the
you grill the
salad. And,
meat, or,
yeah.
Okay, so that brings me another question to like approach. So, Anne, when you write your novels, do you have any sort of, I don't want to call it a recipe, but like a synopsis, or do you plan it out? Or do you improvise? And would you say it's like the way Michael cooks, or is it different?
Like the way Michael cooks.
Ah,
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's not. No, I have a real system that I do.
What is
Um,
it?
So I decide on my container how much time the novel's going to cover, because I really feel like knowing how much time you're going to cover in a novel really helps.
Yeah.
You control backstory and control digressions, and I guess I'm a control freak. This is clear
Yes.
from the onions. Yeah. Um, and I don't call it a synopsis, but it is,
It's like, I think I get the idea of it.
yeah, I just kind of
Okay.
generally say what's going to happen, when knowing that can all go to hell in a minute, and I'll be good with that. But I
Right.
need to start feeling like I have a plan. And that's
Yeah.
where Michael and I are like, is we both are planners in
Yeah.
life and in work.
That's interesting. I was going to ask another question, but I want to hear you talk more about in life and in work plans. Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean by that?
I know what I'm going to be doing this week and the next week. I know what I'm going to be doing today and what hours I'm going to be doing them, or I try to anyways. Of course, things happen.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
To control, because we only have so much time and there's so much to do, and
Okay.
it makes you more efficient. I'm all about efficiency. She's less about efficiency in the way I am. She's got her own methods that are different from mine. For instance, I want to work for a good solid 3 hours in the morning. I want to take a break, and I want to spend at least 2 or 3 hours in the evening or afternoon also working. And I want to do that every day. And I want to produce a certain amount of words. When I'm working on a book, I want to have at least 1,000 words a day. She is not like that at all.
No. Well,
You're crazy.
let's go for a walk.
Relax.
Whatever.
I have relaxed a little bit, actually. because of that.
I have relaxed them a little. It's been good. I think it's
That's good. That's good. So if you were going to have your perfect meal for both of you, that you both would consider your perfect meal, from the cocktail to the salad to the main dish to the dessert, what would it be?
I have two answers. So
You start.
well, our perfect meal has been in Northern California at lunch with 2 or 3 bottles of rosé, and how many?
54 oysters.
54 raw oysters. It was our perfect.
Oh, okay. And what about dessert?
We don't do dessert.
Oh, you don't do dessert?
Whiskey and chocolate is the perfect dessert.
We have whiskey and a piece of chocolate, if we even have the chocolate.
Wow. So you don't have sweet tooths, or do you have salt tooth?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's usually one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go for the pretzels when I can get
What I
them.
would do to make a perfect meal for Anne's, what I'd want to do is I'd want to have fix her a whiskey sour, which would include an egg white.
That's my favorite.
Egg white, simple syrup, lemon lime juice, and whiskey.
And the egg white.
And the egg white.
Yep.
And then I would make her a pork chop, and I'd do my best to make roasted peppers.
Yeah.
And then I'd have some sort of roasted potatoes with those, or if I was feeling really, really risky, I tried to do a carbonara with that to really impress her, because that's
kid.
her favorite.
Carbonara is
I
my
can't.
favorite food. Spaghetti carbonara.
And she makes the best carbonara.
Oh,
Hands
that's
down,
great.
better
That's
than
great. So what mistakes do you think writers make, and what mistakes do you think home cooks make? And do you think that cooking and writing are just sort of different languages for the same kind of creativity?
No, I think they're the same language, don't you?
It's interesting. I've never really quite thought about it so directly, but yeah, I mean, in what's different is when you make a mistake in cooking, you can usually eat it and enjoy it. When you make a mistake in writing, you have to throw it out. There's so much that you throw out in writing, and that's part of the process.
Right, right.
But there should be no prescription about how you must do things, that you cannot use second person, that you have to do
change times,
can't change times or
chronology
point of views.
Right.
You can do whatever you want if you know the rules, and the rules are fundamental. And as they are in cooking, when you know the fundamentals, the basics of cooking, how to saute, how to braise, how to make a stock, then you can vary from the recipe and cook intuitively. When you know the rules of writing, when you know the rules of language and how language works, then you can improvise. But you have to learn the rules first. You have to learn the basic craft first.
It's like knitting.
Like knitting, yeah. But
No,
you know what? That's an interesting thing, because actually I stopped knitting for like, I don't know, like 20 years after our first marriage. And then I tried to, I tried to knit again, and I just couldn't do it. And then I thought, I'm going to start really simple and go back to the basics. And I found it just fed my soul, which I think cooking and writing do. So I wanted to ask you both, like, how did you both know that you were going to be writers and have something to do with food when you were little?
Not
you
the
did.
food part.
No, though I was my parents both worked, so I was an only child, so I was home after school and alone a lot. And if I wanted to eat anything other than a Pop-Tart or something to heat, I had to make it myself. And I sort of taught myself how to cook, and I liked it.
Wow.
I mean, the first thing I made was like a potato omelet, a potato frittata. And I thought, wow, this was fun to make. It's delicious, and I feel much better after having eaten it than I do with all those Pop-Tarts.
How did you know how to make that as a kid? That potatoes and eggs would be good.
Julia Child, and there was a home ec program in fourth grade. So I started in fourth grade, about the same time I started writing. So for me, they're somehow connected. And I've written most days ever since fifth grade, since the summer of fifth grade.
I'm going to make you tell the wonderful story about, was it a pear tart?
Oh
yeah. Tell the story.
I was watching Julia Child, and I was in fifth grade. It was 1972, 1973. And it was February, of course, in Cleveland in February. There's no fresh fruits back in the 70s, but we had I saw Julia make an apple pie, and I thought, she made it seem so easy. She made it seem so accessible, and that like you could do it too. So even this fifth grader thought, wow, I can do that. That was Julia's gift.
That's amazing.
That was Julia's gift. I went into my kitchen. We didn't have any apples. I didn't think I could even find a pie plate, but we found some canned pears, fruit. She's probably said you can do this with any fruit. And I made a crust, and I made a little tart, a pear tart, and it tasted horrible. It was terrible, but I'd made it. When my dad got home from work, he was an advertising guy. He got home at 6 o'clock with his briefcase, set it down. I said, "Look what I made! I made a pear tart." And he looked at me like I had lobsters crawling out of my throat. I was like, "You what?" He said, "I made a pear tart." He said, "That's amazing," and he praised me.
That's good that he did. That's good that he did. But you went to culinary school, right?
I was a journalist. I thought, it's 1996 and the whole country's becoming interested in chefs and their work. Why don't I go to the school where they're teaching chefs to be chefs and find out what you need to know in order to be a chef? So I went as a journalist, wanting to write about food and chefs. But what I didn't realize was that in order to do that, you had to become a chef. You had to become a real cook. And so I in the process of writing and reporting the making of a chef, I became a cook, a real cook.
That's incredible. And so, Anne, did you always want to be a writer, or was that just like
always?
Like
yeah,
always. Did you have lessons? Did people teach you?
No, I grew up in a very small, very depressed and depressing mill town in Rhode Island. There were like 350 kids in my graduating high school class,
That's
and
all? Oh, boy.
15 went to college. So that's the kind of town it was,
Wow.
including like a community college. There were
Uh-huh.
15 of us. So it was not, when I told my guidance counselor that I wanted to be a writer, he was like, and people don't do that. And it was years later that I realized he meant people here don't do that.
Oh,
Because she had said, well, who wrote all those books behind you on that shelf?
Yeah.
right, right. Oh, that's
People don't
terrible.
do that. But he meant people here because they were dealing with teenage pregnancy and homelessness and abuse and like every horrible. I had no idea at the time. I was in my little group of 15 friends who we all went off into college and not really as aware as we should have been or could have been about the environment in which we were growing up. So, but I decided when I was like 7, I'm going to be a writer.
And how did you teach yourself? Just by reading? I mean, how did you write Somewhere Off the Coast of Maine? How did you know how to structure that?
Oh, this is a good story, though. The Ann
Oh,
Tyler
about the
one.
Ann Tyler
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. So I didn't know, and I was writing blindly. I would read a book and I would write in the margins, like start with action. Oh, backstory doesn't happen for 30 pages or a chapter. I just like figuring it out myself, deconstructing stuff. And I was stuck on Somewhere Off the Coast of Maine, which I wrote as interconnected short stories, went to Breadloaf, and the wonderful Nick Delbanco told me, no, it's a novel. Go home and write it because it's going to be published. He's also one of Gail's clients, Caroline. So I said, okay.
Wow.
So I went and tried to make it a novel, and it sold with only 70 pages written.
Oh my God, that's unheard of.
But I did not know how to turn it into a novel. My wonderful editor, Deb Futter, at that time believed I could. So I believed it. But there was a point where I was like, I have to give this money back. Like, I can't do this. I took a long walk from my Bleecker Street apartment to the Spring Street bookstore in Soho in Manhattan. And I just looked at books because I was gearing myself to say, I have to give the money back. And I saw this book, and it was called Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant by Ann Tyler.
Right.
And
right.
it just appealed to me. And I took it. I said, I'm going to just go and I'm going to read this. I'm going to have like a lot of white wine. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to call Deb Futter and tell her, here's your money. I can't make this a novel. I stayed up and read that book straight through, woke up in the morning and said, I know how to fix my book. And I figured out a structure. It just came out of me. Many, many years later, recently, actually, I learned that Ann Tyler
Gottlieb.
had written that as connected short stories.
And Robert Gottlieb.
That's
said,
so
"This is a novel."
interesting. Said it's a
Told her it
novel.
was a novel and
It's a
helped her
novel.
restructure it. And it's like, that was the perfect book I needed to read to figure out how to write my book. And it just like, fell into my, I mean, it's crazy.
So what was it like taking your career onward from that? I mean, when you approached your second book, did you think, oh my God, I have to do it again? Or did you think like, oh, I can do this?
No, I was so excited because you have to know that I went very quickly from asking people, would you like chicken or beef? For people asking me, how did you write your novel?
And
I'm like,
okay.
Wait a minute, I don't know. I was just like on a 747 a few months ago serving people. And
A TWA flight attendant.
Yeah, TWA
Wow.
flight attendant. So I just, I was just so grateful and delighted to be doing it. I had no fear.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What a career you've had. It's amazing. It's like there's nothing you can't do. And there's nothing you can't do in terms of cooking, it seems, too. It's just this is we have to start winding up. So I always say, wait, I have to ask one more question, which is, which question do you think I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Oh, geez.
I don't like that question.
You don't like that question? Would you answer that question, Ann? Let me ask. Oh, I have a question. I have one more question. I actually have one more question because, Ann, you teach. And I always want to know that, do you find that when you're working with other writers that it helps your own writing, or do you sometimes feel like you wish you weren't because you want all the time?
I think it absolutely helps. Okay. Absolutely. Well, I've never taught full time, and I think if I did, I might have the other feeling of like, I don't need to write. I teach so little, or not little, but sporadically or little lumps, I hear myself telling students something and I'm like, do it yourself, go fix your book. Like, that's what's wrong. You didn't do that. I mean, that happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I just feel smart sometimes. I like that feeling of feeling smart. When you look at somebody's work and you think, of course, I know exactly what they're supposed to do. When you look at your own, you think, oh my God, I don't.
I know, I have no idea.
Okay, so Tom, I know Tom wants a cocktail recipe from you before we sign off. So tell us what the perfect, can you create a Mighty Blaze cocktail for us?
Well,
Ooh.
I do a Friday cocktail hour cocktail every Friday, and I post it on Facebook and Instagram and on my site. And today's is the Beachcomber because it's still summer and it's rum.
And we're at the beach.
And we're at the beach. And it was created either by Don the Beachcomber or by Trader Vic trying to copy or play off Don the Beachcomber's popularity. And it's kind of like a rum margarita, only with a dash of maraschino liqueur. So the Friday cocktail hour today is a Beachcomber, which is 2 ounces of light rum, 3/4 ounces of lime, fresh lime juice, 3/4 ounces of Curacao or triple sec. That's basically a margarita right there.
Yeah.
There's a little simple syrup to sweeten it up, and there is a flare of Luxardo, the maraschino liqueur, which adds this I don't know, the je ne sais quoi element that makes it a completely unique cocktail, even though it's kind of based on the margarita model. So the Beachcomber is today's Friday cocktail.
I highly recommend getting little plastic mermaids, as we have, that sit on your glass.
Yes, and make a Mai Tai too. This led from a Mai Tai, which both of them are undervalued cocktails, and I urge you to have a look at them.
Well, I think all people listening to this and every Mighty Blaze people are going to make this cocktail tonight. And thank you both so much. This was so much fun. The best interviews are when people are just laughing and just carrying on. And
too quickly. That's my only complaint.
That stuff does happen. And this will be recorded. You will get many more hits because people return and they think, oh my God, there's Hood and Michael Ruhlman. I'll go and listen to see what they have to say. And I think Tom is coming in to close this down soon. I never know when to stop talking.
Right, I get it.